So the next step in making a thesis statement is to make sure that your statement doesn't fall into the pitfalls of undergraduate poor thesis statements. My example that I had up for you guys to review a moment ago, I have fixed, and I will also put this example online so you can view it as well. So they're questions, right? Thesis statements are your best guess answers to questions that you have, and you actually write the best guess answer in your paper. And as you research it throughout the semester, this best guess answer is going to evolve based on your research. So this best guess answer, though, has some pretty major pitfalls that it can fall into. If your thesis statement is too big, too small, it is an opinion, all those things will make it unworkable. So it can't go forward and be good in writing. So let's talk more about this. Okay, so a good thesis statement at an undergraduate level or any level, these apply, this first one applies to any level. It's interesting to the writer, right? It's really hard to write about something that you don't care about. You're going to find yourself dragging your feet this semester. Like, you're going to get to the end of the semester and be so over this class. You might already feel that way because there's like a lot of work to do and a lot of stuff to understand. But if you're excited, if you open up your laptop and you are excited to write, you're excited to find out the answer to a burning question you have, it's going to help you get through the semester. So it's interesting to you, the writer. This is one of the most common mistakes I see people make. I see them just not care about what they're writing about. They're doing it because they think it'll get a good grade, or because they have to, because it's their field of study. Again, I encourage you to write thesis statements in your field of study. Choose topics in that field, but if you do not have a burning desire to know information about that, maybe that would be a bad idea. So a big one that undergraduate students make when they're writing thesis statements is it's not argumentative, right? So in a really good thesis statement, there are two sides to it. That means people both disagree and agree on the actual statement sentence, working thesis statement that you made. Here's a good test for that. So if you took a room full of rational people, that's very key what I just said. If you took a room, let's say 100 people, you have to have rational people in the room. And these people also might know something about your topic, maybe just a little bit. So, and you call out your thesis statement in that room, your working thesis statement. And one side of the room was the people who agree with you, and one side of the room, people who disagreed with you. The room would be pretty evenly split. Let's do an example. So if I called out in a room, there's a sun in the sky, right? Everyone's going to run to the I agree with you side. If you have someone run to the not agree with you side, they're not a rational person and they don't belong in this room, because we have a room full of rational people. If I called out dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago, everyone's going to agree with you. Those are not thesis statements because they're not argumentative. Good thesis statements will split a room. Maybe they only split the room 75-25. Maybe they split it 50-50. Those are good thesis statements when they split a room 50-50. But they do split a room. Now, you might not know if your thesis statement is argumentative. You might say to yourself, I have no idea if there's a debate going on this. Well, it would be as simple as a quick Google search to see if people are discussing this topic. However, most of you, if you're interested in something, know that something's been kind of undecided or something is argumentative in the world. For instance, just think of modern times and how many things people are debating about nowadays. It's just a plethora of things. So I had a student in another class say, I'm really interested in fishing bans. He's going to be a forester. And so he's interested in the bans on fishing to help recuperate the fish population. And so he said, well, I wanna argue that the Lake Superior fishing bans are necessary, but that's not very popular around here to say that because commercial fishing is a big industry. And so there are two sides to that argument. If he were to say, call out his working thesis, which I believe ended up being something along the lines of fishing bans for trout populations within the Lake Superior watershed are necessary, though they hamper economic development. If he were to call that out in a room, you would have people run to both sides of the room, pretty 50-50 split. That's an example of a good thesis statement. It's specific and manageable. It's the next thing down in the good column here. It's specific and manageable. Your thesis statement must be narrow enough for you to do a good job. Okay, here's an example of things that are too big. If you were to argue that you're going to talk about all of global warming, all of it, the whole entire thing of it, you're going to have bitten off too much and your paper is going to be all over the place and scattered because it won't be focused enough for you to be focused enough. So maybe you just want to talk about the effects of global warming on Lake Superior. See how that got narrowed in quite a bit? But if you talked about the effects of global warming on your parents' pond, that's so small that you're probably not going to be able to find any research on it. So it can't be too big and it can't be too small. You're looking for the Goldilocks zone of thesis statements here because you got about 10 to 15 pages of work to do where in your CSC sections, you're going to be doing the S part. And you don't want to go like 45 pages and you don't want to go 2 pages. So how do you adjust your thesis statement to fit in that Goldilocks zone? That's your challenge. As I'm going over these, I hope you are looking at your own thesis statements, trying to investigate them and figure out if they do need adjustment, even in this preliminary stage here. It is not a claim of fact. So it does, or it is a claim of fact. I'm sorry. It lives in the past is what I mean by that. I talked a lot about living in the past as undergraduate students. It should not have a should in it, or an ought, or a could. You're not living in the future. Even if you don't have a should, ought, or could, a lot of times they're hidden should statements, right? They say something along the lines of, it's a good idea to enforce immigration policy. Well, it's a good idea is the same thing as a should statement. We should enforce immigration policy. That's just a hidden should. So it's not even a hidden should in there. It lives in the past, something you can prove true. In the past, when immigration policy has been enforced, working wages for people in the United States have gone up. Maybe that's your working thesis statement. I'm not sure that statement is true, but that's something you could investigate. It has an audience, so if you want to go to a conference or you want to present at a poster session, usually you want to pick things that have a bigger interest outside yourself. It also plays into that idea of ethos, where we are doing work for the greater good. So you want to pick a topic that maybe addresses the greater good a little bit. It is not talked about so often that we are tired of hearing about it. Global warming or marijuana are one of those things that we see so often in the news media. And I actually don't mind if you write a paper on them. That's okay, that's fine. I'm just saying if you're sick of hearing about it, you probably don't want to write about it. It's not simply a matter of personal taste or faith. I get this a lot. Students want to write about things that they just believe rather than things that they can prove true. I don't discredit beliefs at all. Whatever you believe, you really have the right to that opinion, and it is not for me to stand in the way of it. However, can you prove it true beyond your faith or your belief? If you can't, it's not an academic research paper as much as it would be like an opinion piece. So make sure that it's not something you just prefer or believe. The next one is actually something you prefer. So a lot of times I actually had a student write, Ford is better than Chevy. And I said, that is provable. If that was your statement, you would want to get into the mechanics of engine failure and brake systems, something about Ford internally, and the engineering in it would have to be better than Chevy. And the student did not want to write about engineering, just wanted to write about the overall feeling he gets when he's in a Ford versus a Chevy. Well, that's not something that's researchable, your feelings. We want things that you can prove true. Kind of very similar to personal taste or belief, a matter of preference. It's very similar to that. You got to be able to prove it true. So that's the good and the bad of thesis statements. Check your own statements to see that you're not in any of the bad categories, that you're in all the good categories, and now you have somewhere to go forward with